If this story moved you, imagine how many more are out there waiting to be told. Stories of strength, justice, and redemption, just like Danielle's. Don't miss out on the next journey. Subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you're always the first to watch. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or pushed aside, this space is for you. Leave a comment, share your thoughts, and be part of a community that believes in rising again, stronger. Your support helps us bring more voices to light. Subscribe now and help us keep these powerful stories alive. The email landed in my inbox at exactly 9:03 a.m. Subject: Meeting with HR and Executive Management. Time: 9:30 a.m., room 4B. No explanation. No context. Just the kind of message that immediately tightens your chest and makes your stomach turn. I had given 18 years of my life to Redwood Systems in Sacramento, California. 18 years of launching initiatives no one believed in, staying late to patch back-end systems, mentoring fresh-out-of-college analysts, and troubleshooting emergencies others couldn't even identify. I'd missed Thanksgiving dinners, 2 of my daughter's school plays, and even my father's memorial service, because this can't wait. And now I was being summoned, like a child caught sneaking out, to room 4B. Still, I didn't panic. Not because I wasn't angry or afraid. I was. But something in me had shifted lately. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just resolved. On the way to the room, I passed the team lounge where the vending area still had a plaque, donated by Camille. I'd spearheaded that renovation. I passed the display of our most successful product launch, something I had engineered down to the day, while Alan, my boss, had soaked up the spotlight on camera. Outside room 4B, I paused, took a slow breath, and walked in. Alan was at the head of the table, flanked by Julia from HR. She had the rehearsed expression HR folks always wear in these moments, measured sympathy with a side of company policy. Alan didn't even try to act. He steepled his fingers and looked at me like he was playing the role of a remorseful CEO in a soap opera. "Camille," he began, solemn as a funeral. "After careful evaluation, the company has made the difficult decision to eliminate your position as part of a broader strategic shift." Strategic shift, I echoed quietly. A polite way of saying I was no longer useful to them, despite Alan once telling me I was the engine of our department. Julia handed me a manila envelope. "Inside are the details of your severance, 3 weeks of pay per year of service, benefits continuation for 90 days, and access to a career transition coach." I looked down at the folder, then up at Alan. "I understand," I said evenly. No pleading. No justifications. Just calm acknowledgement. And that seemed to rattle him more than outrage ever could. He cleared his throat. "Please return your ID and laptop by 5 today. And we ask that you clear your desk before then." I stood, adjusted my jacket, and nodded once. "Thank you for the opportunity." Then I turned and walked out with the same poise I'd carried since day one. What Alan and Julia didn't know, what no one in that room could have imagined, was that at 7:01 a.m., I had signed the final lease agreement to open Lanecast Analytics' new regional office in downtown Sacramento. Lanecast, the direct competitor of Redwood Systems, a company that had been quietly courting me for 4 months after I got a message on LinkedIn. "We've been following your work, Camille. Would you be open to a confidential conversation?" At first, I ignored it. I had always believed loyalty mattered. But somewhere between Alan stealing my ideas and promoting a clueless junior manager with a golf handicap, my faith had worn thin. I took that first call. Then another. And another. Now, I wasn't being discarded. I was leveling up. Quietly, strategically, just like I'd done everything else. By the time HR had finalized the documents to terminate me, I had already secured a senior executive agreement with full benefits, stock options, and complete authority to build my own department at Holloway Analytics, located in Denver, Colorado. This wasn't about revenge, not yet. This was preparation. I returned to my workstation, settling into the familiar chair one last time. I let my eyes drift across the office, taking in the quiet rhythm of a world that didn't yet realize a critical gear was being removed. Keystrokes echoed faintly. Someone chuckled at a Slack message. Coffee mugs clinked. Normalcy hummed on. "Hey," said Jasmine from the contracts team, gently resting her hand on the side of my desk. "You good?" I gave her a calm smile. "Actually, better than I've been in years." The cardboard box they gave me didn't hold much. I left behind the outdated files, the mugs with fading logos, and the picture frames of team events I no longer felt a part of. Not out of spite, just clarity. At 4:57 p.m., I handed my access badge to a receptionist I didn't recognize, someone who had probably joined just last quarter. Her eyes widened. "Wait, are you leaving?" I nodded slightly. Apparently so. As I walked out of Redwood Systems for the last time, the sunlight filtered through the glass awning, warm, steady, unbothered. I glanced down at the manila folder still in my hand. My name was printed neatly on the cover, Danielle Brooks. Tomorrow, that name would be on a different door, Director of Growth Strategy, Holloway Analytics. And Monday would be the beginning of something much bigger. That Monday arrived crisp and cool, the kind of late October morning that feels like a reset button. I stood in front of the mirrored walls inside Holloway's downtown headquarters, straightening the hem of my forest green blazer. No ID badge yet, but a deep sense of assurance settled over me. This was more than a new job. It was liberation. As the elevator opened, a cheerful woman at the welcome desk smiled. "Miss Brooks? Mr. Langston is ready for you." Jeremy Langston, CEO of Holloway, known for his strategic brilliance and rare loyalty. He and I had spoken often in recent months. Our talks were honest, unguarded. He valued sharp thinking over showmanship. I was led to the top floor. The glass-paneled office had a subtle plaque. Danielle Brooks, Director, Growth Strategy. No shared credit. No subordinate title. Just my name, without compromise. Jeremy rose as I entered, extending his hand. "Danielle, I've been looking forward to this." "Thank you for the trust," I replied. He grinned. "Trust?" "I reviewed your analytics reports. Your work at Redwood increased client renewal rates by 22% over 6 years. We've been trying to crack that number for ages." He gave me a tour of the office, introduced me to my leadership team, then walked me into a boardroom where key department heads were already gathered. No hesitation. No awkward stares. Just respect. The meeting kicked off with projections for Holloway's next fiscal expansion, target regions, partnership goals, and the upcoming tech rollout. My role would be central in shaping the strategy for market outreach and client acquisition. Then Jeremy paused the slides. "We've also approved your request," he said. "You have full discretion to hire your own team. Build it your way, with people who match your drive." That was the moment it all clicked into place. A new beginning. Not imagined. Not promised. Real. Earned. Mine. I had invested 18 years at Redwood Systems, cultivating teams, developing internal leaders, and guiding overlooked talent into roles they weren't supposed to reach. But when budget cuts came, none of it counted. Loyalty, sacrifice, quiet brilliance, it all vanished with a signature. Now, standing in a new office, in a new city, at age 52, I finally had the authority to shape someone else's future. "Thank you," I said, voice even, measured. "I already have several names in mind." That night, I opened my laptop in my new apartment in Denver's Five Points district and began writing 6 emails. Each one addressed to someone I had mentored back at Redwood. Subject: New chapter. Let's reconnect. Each message was crafted with care, clear, respectful, and real. I wrote to designers who were ignored, engineers who were bypassed, analysts whose innovations were claimed by louder voices. Within half an hour, 3 had responded. By midnight, all 6 replied. "Yes, Danielle. Just say where and when." On Tuesday morning, the aftershocks began. I was sipping an oat milk latte in the lounge on the 17th floor of Holloway Analytics when my phone buzzed. LinkedIn. For former team members had updated their profiles to open to new opportunities. The timing? Not subtle. Neither were the messages that followed. Alan just called an emergency meeting. Half the growth team updated their job status at once. Julia from HR asked if I'd been in touch with you. I didn't answer. They're in panic mode. Post. Q3 morale is tanking. I didn't respond to every message, but I read each one twice. Meanwhile, at Holloway, I coordinated with our compliance lead to finalize onboarding documents. Not just contracts, offers of purpose. I included competitive salaries, hybrid flexibility, and, most importantly, credit. Every contribution would be documented under their names. No more ghostwriting success stories for others. By Wednesday afternoon, Jeremy Langston, our CEO, pulled me into his office. We just got a call, he said, from a client who left us last year for Redwood. They want to revisit their account. I raised an eyebrow. Any reason why? Jeremy gave a half smile. They asked if Danielle Brooks would be leading their transition. That evening, I received a text from Alan. Hey, I heard you landed somewhere. Congrats. Want to catch up? No apology. No acknowledgement. Just a shallow olive branch from a man who used to interrupt me mid-sentence in front of board members. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the private Slack channel I'd set up with the team I was bringing in. We laughed, swapped stories from the Redwood days, and refined our roadmap for the new product launch. Then Nina, the quietest in the group, wrote, Danielle, you saw something in us when no one else did. I'm all in. Something stirred in my chest, not grief, not bitterness. Relief. For so long, I'd watched others take bows for performances they hadn't rehearsed. I'd been spoken over, overlooked, even erased. But not anymore. Now, I had the voice and the volume. This wasn't about revenge. This was about rebuilding with intention. With integrity. As for Alan, he was just beginning to feel the consequences of firing the wrong person. By the end of my first week at Holloway Analytics, the atmosphere at Redwood Systems had started to shift. And not in the way their executive team had hoped. The signs began with silence. The kind that hangs in office corners when people are too afraid to speak, but desperate to know what's really going on. On Monday morning, I received a message from Ethan, my former infrastructure analyst. They pulled everyone into a last-minute meeting today. Alan tried to play it cool, but the room could feel it. Someone asked where you'd gone. He changed the subject. By Tuesday afternoon, I had quiet confirmation that 2 legacy accounts at Redwood Systems were rethinking their contracts. Both reached out through indirect contacts, asking if I was involved in any upcoming ventures, and if not, why. I hadn't sought them out. I didn't need to. My work had never been about just platforms or implementation. It was about people. I'd spent nearly 2 decades forging trust, translating complexity into clarity, and delivering under pressure. That kind of reputation doesn't vanish. And people talk. At Holloway Analytics, the foundation of something new had started to take shape. Nina had officially signed and begun onboarding. By midweek, 2 more accepted offers. We weren't just assembling talent, we were uniting around a purpose. Every name added to the team felt like a piece of something meaningful falling into place. This wasn't about proving survival. It was about creating space for others to rise. Later that day, while reviewing technical roadmaps with our platform architect, another alert lit up my phone. LinkedIn update. Alan had changed his title. Chief Innovation Officer. No announcement. No fanfare. Just a quiet adjustment clearly designed to project stability in my absence. I laughed. It didn't signal strength. It signaled anxiety. A man trying to patch the hole in a ship he'd only realized was sinking after I stepped off. That night, I received a call from Monica, an old colleague from Redwood's compliance division. At first, her voice was careful. Then it cracked with sincerity. Danielle, I just wanted to say, I'm sorry. I didn't know what they were planning. I took a breath. You don't owe me anything, Monica. You weren't part of the decision. She hesitated. Still, I feel guilty. They held private discussions weeks before you were let go. I only found out during the final policy review. But the fallout, Danielle, they're spiraling. They didn't expect this. They didn't think it would matter, I said. You were the constant while everything else changed, she said softly. Now Alan's scrambling. Daily stand-ups, deadlines no one can meet. He's trying to prove it's business as usual, but no one believes it. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Then she added something that stayed with me. I'm not asking you for anything. I just wanted you to know what you built. It mattered. By Thursday, I sat across from Jeremy Langston in his glass-walled office at Holloway, going over projections for our first major release. The room buzzed with possibility. Initial builds are exceeding benchmark targets, he said, tapping the dashboard on his tablet. And we haven't even publicized a release date. 2 investment firms reached out this morning. That's because our messaging is aligned, I replied. Efficiency, accountability, and lasting value. That's what clients look for and remember. He leaned back, eyes focused. Danielle, you've made more impact in your first 10 days than some VPs have in an entire fiscal year. I smiled. But behind the compliment was a deeper truth I was finally ready to accept. I hadn't changed. I'd simply stopped asking permission to lead. I'd spent my whole career supporting others, so when I was finally recognized, it didn't feel real at first. That afternoon, Nina stopped by my office carrying 2 cups of coffee, one black, lightly spiced, just how I've always preferred it. I still can't believe this is yours, she said, glancing around the space. You're actually running the show now. I smiled. Technically, Jeremy runs the company. I'm just the one who signs off on spreadsheets. She shook her head gently. No, Danielle. You're the one we trust. You always were. Her words caught me off guard. I thought about all those nights at Redwood, staying late to salvage project reports Alan had bungled, or weekends mentoring interns for presentations that someone else would take credit for. There were times I wondered if any of it mattered. But now I knew it had. Because here I was not rebuilding alone, but leading something meaningful. Later that evening, as I was preparing to leave, another message from Monica popped up. Just a heads up. Alan's called for an emergency board session. Word is, he's trying to shift blame onto performance breakdowns in strategic delivery. Also, HR just contacted an external recruiter. Looks like they're quietly preparing for leadership changes. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed a single reply. He should be. Because the tremors were only just beginning. By the next Monday, the whispers at Redwood Systems had turned into full-blown anxiety. Not the kind that grabs headlines, but the kind that erodes companies from the inside out. The warning signs came in waves. First, missed project milestones. Then, frustrated clients asking why their inquiries went unanswered. And worst of all, total radio silence from upper management. That morning, I was in a product planning session at Holloway, mapping out our second phase deployment, when Nina passed me a sticky note across the table. Redwood just pulled out of the National Tech Insights Summit. I blinked, folded the note, and slipped it into my notebook. 3 weeks ago, Alan had been proudly flaunting his spot as a headline speaker for that very event. Now gone, no explanation. After the meeting, I stepped out to call Jeremy. Before I could say anything, he greeted me with a tone that was equal parts humor and amazement. You've stirred up more momentum in this space than I anticipated, he said. 3 of Redwood's longtime clients reached out this morning asking for product demos. All of them asked if Danielle Brooks would be involved. I exhaled slowly. Let's prioritize the serious ones. The rest can wait. He was quiet for a beat. You're not doing this to take them down, are you? I paused. No. I'm doing this to build something authentic. If their structure collapses in the process, that's not my doing, it's theirs. That afternoon, another message came in, this time from Marco, a junior software developer who had been hesitant about leaving Redwood. Danielle, I think it's time. It's chaos here. They split your old responsibilities between two senior managers, neither of whom understands the architecture you created. Yesterday, they asked me to explain the entire dev cycle to the leadership team in half an hour. I've been here less than a year. Are you still hiring? I replied without hesitation. Yes, let's set up a meeting. By Tuesday morning, Marco was sitting across from me, his posture weary, his eyes tired. I don't know how I lasted this long, he said. Everything's reactive. No direction. No leadership. I nodded slowly, understanding completely. That's what happens when people lead by control instead of collaboration. It looks strong until it cracks. When the foundation's built on ego, it only takes one disruption to bring the whole thing down, Marco said, his voice low. I don't want to just hang on, I want to grow in something meaningful. You will, I replied, sliding the offer letter across the table. This isn't just a position. It's a platform, and your voice matters here. His pen hit the paper with calm resolve. Like a chapter closing, not in defeat, but in clarity. By Wednesday, the slow fracture at Redwood Systems had ruptured wide open. A contact forwarded me an internal message circulated by Alan. We are entering an organizational reconfiguration to optimize efficiency and resource alignment. We appreciate your flexibility and commitment as we navigate this phase of progress. It was a masterclass in corporate vagueness. But between the lines, the truth was obvious. They were losing control. That evening, over drinks with Jeremy and our finance director at a quiet rooftop bar in downtown Denver, we went over Q1 lead forecasts. If even half of these close, Holloway is on track to post its best opening quarter in years, the finance director said, raising his glass. To the missing puzzle piece, he added, nodding at me. It was never missing, I replied. It was just buried under the wrong structure. The next morning, I awoke to a voicemail from Monica. Her tone was clipped and urgent. Danielle, call me. It's important. I rang her back instantly. She answered on the first ring. It's happening, she said. The board held an emergency vote late last night. Alan's out. Though I had anticipated it, the speed surprised me. They've appointed an outside interim CEO, she continued. Leadership is under review. Full strategic audit. They're trying to stop the bleed. I didn't say anything right away. I just sat still, letting the moment land. They never thought this would spread, I said finally. No, she agreed, but you turned your departure into a direction, and people followed. That afternoon, Jeremy stepped into my office, a subtle grin on his face. You've got lunch tomorrow with one of Redwood's former accounts. Major player. They said they're not interested in postmortems, just excited about what you're designing now. Perfect, I said. Because looking back serves no purpose. We build forward. Once he left, I turned toward the vision board on my wall. Milestones, timelines, a roadmap I had once presented to Redwood's leadership, only to be told it was too bold, too intricate, too risky. Now it was in motion. It was ours. And Alan? He was discovering that leadership doesn't come from hierarchy, it comes from trust. It's earned in small moments, not job titles. He had kept my chair warm for years. Now, I was constructing the entire room. By Friday, the outreach was constant. The whispers were gone. Danielle Brooks wasn't a behind-the-scenes name anymore. She was the blueprint. My inbox was full. Former clients, consultants, hiring managers, and even people I didn't know all reaching out. Some wanted to collaborate. Others just wanted to thank me. But the most unexpected message came at 10:47 a.m. Vanessa Kerr, a name I hadn't seen in years. CFO of one of Redwood's largest accounts. Back then, she had once said quietly, if they ever lose you, don't expect me to stick around. Her voice on the call was calm, but there was steel underneath. Danielle, she said, I think it's time we talked about what's next. Danielle, she began, I've been watching the changes unfold at Redwood, following your progress at Holloway, and keeping an eye on the new initiative you've launched. It's remarkable. Thank you, I replied cautiously. I have to admit, I wasn't expecting your call. She paused. You know I don't make a move unless there's a purpose. And I have one now. We're terminating our engagement with Redwood Systems. I sat back in my chair, surprised. They've lost focus, she continued. No clear leadership, chaotic structure, and an interim CEO who's more symbolic than operational. Their team actually requested we postpone our quarterly audit because they couldn't get the back-end systems to generate a full report. I didn't need more details. The framework I'd built had likely been jury-rigged by those who never understood its architecture. Once it fractured, there was no roadmap for repair. We're evaluating alternatives, Vanessa said. But between us, I don't want a vendor. I want to work with you. I turned toward the window, Denver's skyline glowing under the late evening sun. I appreciate the trust, I said. But I don't just take contracts anymore. I align with those who value long-term integrity. I'm not offering a project, she replied. This is something different. Join us full-time. Lead the transformation program from within. Executive-level authority. Direct influence. And an equity package. I went still. This wasn't a consulting arrangement. This was a legacy-shaping role, a seat at the top of a new structure. After the call, I didn't move for several minutes. I just sat in silence, the weight of the offer settling in. Holloway had given me something extraordinary, space to rebuild, a team to grow with, and the freedom to lead. But Vanessa's offer represented something more expansive, a chance to reshape culture beyond technology. Still, leaving Olivia, Marco, and the others so soon? It didn't sit right. They weren't just team members. They were people who'd followed me through fire. That evening, I met Jeremy for drinks. He greeted me at a quiet lounge on Colfax Avenue, already half-smiling. So, he said, swirling a glass of bourbon. Vanessa Kerr. I narrowed my eyes. How do you know? She called me, he said. Mentioned she gave you an offer. And I told her she should be honored you even picked up. He took a sip, then leaned in. But I told her something else too. If you ever want to branch beyond analytics, into logistics, operations, enterprise change, I'll back you. Fully. I blinked. Jeremy. No, hear me out, he said. You took a career gut punch and rebuilt your footing in a matter of weeks. Then you helped us reshape an entire division. I know drive like yours doesn't stay parked for long. So, if this next leap is right for you, I won't stand in your way. I nodded slowly. It's not about moving on. It's about going where I can build with purpose. He smiled. And that's what separates you from the Allens of the world. The next morning, walking through Holloway's doors felt different. There was a gravity in every step, not heavy, but solid. Team members stood to greet me. They sought my input. They didn't just hear me, they absorbed what I said. Not because I demanded it, but because I'd earned it. Midday, Nina pulled me aside. Just FYI, she said with a grin. Redwood sent a recruiter after Marco. Same rep who ghosted me 3 years ago. Marco leaned in from the hallway. I replied politely, copied our entire team thread. Nicely handled, I said. He smirked. You should have seen Alan's face. He's not CO anymore, but he's still hovering in the background. That gave me pause. Alan, he was still there. Just then, a ping lit up my screen. It was Monica. Internal buzz. Alan's trying to rebrand himself as Director of Strategic Innovation to hang on. No one's buying it, but keep an eye out. He's not done trying to claw his way back into relevance. I stared at the message for a moment, then typed back. Let him. I have something he'll never grasp, a team that believes in me and a future that doesn't need repairs. Because in a matter of days, Redwood Systems would face a revelation they hadn't anticipated. Their competitor wasn't just growing, we were thriving. 3 months after I walked out of Redwood's front doors with nothing more than a polite smile and a file box, I stepped into Holloway's annual leadership summit to the sound of applause. Not for a speech, not for a headline, but because the new platform my team launched had just secured us a contract worth millions, a deal Redwood had been chasing for years. We didn't win it with glossy presentations or buzzwords. We won it with functionality, with intelligent solutions designed by professionals who had once been dismissed, ignored, or outright pushed aside. Now, that same group was steering one of the fastest-growing innovation units in our field. And I didn't need the recognition. I needed results. And we were only getting started. Earlier that same week, Vanessa Kerr had called again. But this time, it wasn't about another offer. It was to confirm something far more satisfying. "Danielle," she said, "we've completed the full migration. All systems are now under your supervision." The process was flawless. Honestly, I wish we'd made the shift years ago. I thanked her, but before I could say more, she continued. "There's something else." Alan reached out to us directly. I didn't interrupt. I let her speak. He offered consulting services, claimed he had insider knowledge on your methodologies and could lend strategic oversight since, in his words, you and he had worked so closely. I chuckled. Let me guess, he made it sound like we were collaborators? Exactly. I told him the truth. The only thing he ever contributed was delay. And frankly, we're not looking for people who slow progress and call it leadership. She hung up with a promise to connect us with 2 additional enterprise clients before the next quarter. I sat still for a while after that, letting the moment settle in. Alan wasn't just irrelevant now. He was a warning. A man who built his influence on borrowed work and had no idea how to lead when those people walked away. The sad part? He could have chosen to guide, to elevate. But instead, he chose control. Now no one was listening. That Friday, we held our first strategic retreat, not in a sterile office, but at a renovated lodge nestled in the foothills outside Golden, Colorado. Natural light poured through wide windows. Wooden tables covered in post-its. White boards leaned casually against exposed stone, the kind of space that encouraged imagination instead of limiting it. As we reviewed initiatives for the next quarter, I looked around. Marco was coaching a new hire through the integration protocols. Nina was coordinating client strategy calls like a pro. And Monica, now our head of risk and compliance, looked genuinely relaxed, something I hadn't seen in years. At one point, someone asked what we should name the next product line. I stepped to the whiteboard and simply wrote, "Rebuild," because that's what we had done. Brick by brick, principle by principle on our terms. That evening, a new message arrived. No subject line. Just a few words in the preview. I was wrong. We were wrong. It was from Alan. "Danielle, I'm not asking for sympathy. Danielle, I just need you to know I was under immense pressure. Stakeholders, quarterly targets, mounting expectations. I reacted poorly. I see it now. I didn't appreciate what you built. Everything started unraveling after you left. I've lost nearly all of it. I can't stop thinking about how different it could have been if I'd treated you with the respect you earned. I hope life is better for you. I'm sorry, Alan." There was a time when those words might have meant something. I would have read them again and again, wondering if they could fix what was broken. But not anymore. I didn't need an apology to heal. I'd already rebuilt myself. I closed the message. I never replied. A few days later, Holloway unveiled a new initiative, the Danielle Brooks Fellowship, a yearly program to support and mentor women in tech who'd been pushed out of corporate environments and were ready to start over. The board voted unanimously. Jeremy insisted it bear my name. "You shaped this company," he told me. "Not just its tools, its principles. You reminded us what true leadership looks like." For a moment, I couldn't speak. I just nodded. Not from modesty, but from clarity. Exactly 1 year after I'd been cut loose without warning, I stood in my office, no longer surrounded by isolation, but by purpose, movement, innovation. A team that didn't need permission to be exceptional. Then a message came in from Marco. "Hey boss, another client just signed. Redwood's out. That's number 8. Also, we're out of space. Time to upgrade." I smiled as I looked out at the skyline. No anger. No need for revenge. Because bitterness fades. But legacy, that endures.